Hi, and congratulations on the purchase of your 2023 Streetfighter and or Panigale V4 models. Now, we're going to be talking about the V4S here. Those of you with the standard model or the SP models, you're going to have pretty similar things. The only thing that's going to be different is going to be things like the suspension, electronic suspension control. So as I go over it, if you have the standard models with the manually adjustable suspension, just know that you have to adjust those manually and none of these will actually relate to you. But those of you with the S model and the SP models with the electronic suspension, Olin specifically, can follow along with this one. So without any further ado, let's talk about your favorite bike. So if you're like me, one of the big reasons you bought this bike is this beautiful motor. Both of them have the Tesla Stretta V4 motor, and they produce over 200 horsepower, but somehow they're very easy to use and very approachable. So the motor has a 15,000 mile valve check interval on there and about a 9,000 mile oil check interval. We always let people know, do that more often. When you buy it brand new, you have to break it in first. So you're gonna do about 1,000 kilometers of riding. Please make sure as you buy the motorcycle, set an appointment with your local dealership so they can get you in on that break-in service so you can really start getting some power out of it. While you're breaking the bike in, don't take it too easy on the bike, ride it, don't redline it either. Make sure you're introducing load from lowest first gear to highest sixth gear and progress your way up and down with downshifts as well. Let the engine learn how to do its job well. Again, don't redline it too much. One of the worst things you can do also aside from redlining is droning on. So don't ride on the highway for hours and hours in the same gear. The other thing that you want to try to avoid is giving it high load suddenly. That means if you're in top gear, fifth or sixth gear, and you need to pass somebody or gain speed, don't just suddenly pull the throttle even though it's got gobs of power. Downshift a couple of gears and slowly introduce that power to it. These are pretty important, simple, basic rules to follow as you are breaking the bike in. And when you get that first service done, then you can go out there and have a lot of fun with it and make sure you have a nice, long-lasting, beautifully performing motor. One of the cool features of this V4 motor is that it has cylinder deactivation on there. So when you come to a stop, or if you're not really giving the bike the beans, it turns off the rear cylinders on there, cuts on the extra heat, cuts on your fuel usage. It's pretty neat, but you'll notice the sound of the bike change. So when you put the bike in first gear and slowly start letting go of the clutch, you'll hear the entire tone of the bike change. So don't panic when you hear that. That's just the rear cylinders firing back up. In fact, when you first turn the bike on, you may even notice it kind of activating and deactivating the cylinders as it's warming up. So again, don't panic. The bike is just warming up and getting everything kind of going for you. One of my absolute favorite features of this bike is these wings, because they look really cool. No, actually, I mean, they are my favorite, but truly one of my favorite features is the Quickshifter on this motorcycle. It is so smooth and so fast. And again, as I've said it before, you got to make sure you're giving it the beans, but for up and down shifting, it makes life so easy so you can just concentrate on the lines, whether it's on the track or your favorite twisty road. So make sure you take advantage of that. It's really, really fun. First gear clutch, after that, just open the throttle up and bang up through the shifts. And then as you roll down, downshift it and the bike will auto rev match for you. Super cool. One of the great benefits of the S model is these forged aluminum wheels. The non-S models come with cast, and then the R model of the Panigale comes with the same forged wheels, and the SP2 models, which are beautiful as well, come with the carbon wheels. The Streetfighter comes with the Rosa Corsa 4 tires, which are a dual compound, great everyday tire that can actually do some track duty, as you can kind of tell on this bike. The Panigales come with the Super Corsa Pirelli tires, very grippy, very sticky, and just tons of great performance, especially for track, as that bike is really designed to shine very, very well on the track. The rear tire is going to be a 200 section tire, so it's pretty big. There's lots of tire options up there, but I tend to stick with what the factory installed on the bike, as they perform very, very well. Another great benefit of these motorcycles is the suspension. No matter which model you get, it's going to have fully adjustable suspension. The non-S models have the Marzocchi setup, which are again manually adjustable. The S model has the Öhlins electronically adjustable suspension, both on the Panigale and the Streetfighter. The R model has on the Panigale a manually adjustable Öhlins, and then when you go to the SP models, they have the same sort of setup with the electronically adjustable Öhlins on there. We'll go into more depth of how that looks like, especially on these S models, and how you can go about adjusting them. For 2023, Ducati has delivered the Streetfighter V4 and the Panigale V4 with a solo seat setup, but your owner's box should come with an additional rear end with an actual seat and some pegs on there. So if you do want to give somebody a ride, you do have that option. Or you can leave it looking slick like this and have your riding partner get their own motorcycle. Both bikes come with a 4-gallon fuel tank. People often ask, how many miles can I get out of that? It all depends on what kind of a rider you are, but on average, you're probably looking in the 30 mile per gallon range. I just did a track day on my Streetfighter V4S and I'm probably getting closer to about 20 miles a gallon because it's fun to get that engine to redline. So ride to your style and see what kind of mileage you get. I oftentimes get the trip 1 meter going just to kind of give me an idea of what kind of range I can get, and I'm getting about 100 miles or so safely without worrying about it too much. All right, without further ado, let's talk about the controls on these bikes. Now, I will use the Streetfighter for my model, but a lot of the functionality is the same between the Panigale and the Streetfighter. If there's anything vastly different, then I'll make sure to highlight it on the Panigale for you. Okay, let's talk about the controls. We're on the right side of the bike and we've got throttle, obviously, and then we have 4 little buttons here. So we'll go from the top. The very top one is for the optional Ducati heated grips. If you have your dealership install it, they will program it so that this little button can toggle through. If you hit it once, low, second time medium, third time high, and then the 4th time will turn it off on you. So that's for your heated grip. This here is your ignition and your emergency shutoff. So if we were to turn on the bike, all we'd have to do is press this button when this emergency shutoff toggle is up and the bike will fire up for you. And if you want to turn it off, you can simply bring it down or turn the ignition off. And the button below that is kind of a neat button. It's called DPL, which stands for Ducati Power Launch. And that'll allow you to do some awesome gnarly launches if you want to get your track days better, or if you want to take it to the local drag strip and see how you can do. Help you do it, I believe, once every 20 minutes, so you're not overheating the motor. All right, so on the left side, we have a lot more buttons and we'll go over them. Your first button in the very front with your index finger is going to be your passing button. If you pull it in, it'll just flash the high beams for as long as you can hold it. And if you push it out, it'll turn the high beams on permanently. The other function of the passing button is if you have the lap timer on, if you were to pull it in, it'll actually start the lap timer for you. We'll go over that here momentarily again. Next set of buttons is your hazards, so you can have all the blinkers on if you're stopped somewhere and you want to be safe. And then next to that is a little headlight looking button. These bikes come with daytime running lamps on them and you can have them on automatic, which I would suggest. But if you want to turn them off a little bit earlier and you feel like you would need more headlight, you simply hit it once. On the dash, you'll see a bright green headlight emblem. If that's on, it means the DRL is on. And if it's off, it means the DRL is off. And then the next set of buttons, a couple of joysticks here. The top, the one on the left will have a mode enter up and down on there. This is going to help you go through your different modes, and if you're selecting certain things in the settings menu, this will help you enter into them and up and down toggle. And then the one to the right has enter and up and down on it as well. We'll go over that as well here in a minute, but it's a quick access button for things like traction control, wheelie control, and whatnot that we'll go over here in a second. All right, below that you have the turn signal switch, which is manual, but you can have it in automatic mode, which I tend to leave mine in, and I'll show you how to do that later on. And below that is the horn. Pretty loud. All right, let's get into the settings menu. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of why you're watching this video. Let's get into what the screen's got in store for you. So, first things first, the modes. This bike has a pretty quick and easy way of changing between its 4 different modes. This is going to be the same on the Panigale as well as the Streetfighter in functionality, even though the modes are different names on them, but it's pretty much the same and you'll get the idea pretty quickly. So, as I showed you earlier, the left big button on the left side handlebar says mode, enter, and up and down on there. The big white dot indicates that it's a longer hold. So if we hold this button down for a couple of seconds, the mode selection comes up. It's a quick mode select. We can go through the settings menu later on and fix each mode up to our specific needs. But for time being, I'm just going to show you how to do it quickly. So we held the button down and now we see that there is road, sport, race, and also wet. Each one of these modes is preset from the factory a certain way, but again, you can change it yourself. But as you can see, wet mode has got the least amount of power, highest amount of traction, highest amount of ABS, highest amount of wheelie control. And slide control is pretty high, engine brake is pretty normal, and quick shift is on. And then the suspension is in dynamic mode right now. we'll go over that as well. So that's wet mode. Next one is road mode, which is a little bit more power, a little bit less of all the electronics. And then sport mode, which is now on high power. And again, a little bit less of all the electronic nannies that are on the bike. And then race mode, again, is on high power and even less so on all the different settings, such as ABS, for instance, and engine brake control. So we're gonna go through one by one and set these up in the settings menu. I'm gonna only do it on one mode, but you can basically do this exact same thing on each mode and it gives you an idea. So if you wanna select one, you scroll up or down to the one you want and you press enter once, and the bike changes what mode it is in. So one more time, hold the button down for 2 seconds, go to the mode you want, select it, and you're on. Now, you can do this while the bike is running. So if you're riding the bike, you can do this again. So I'm gonna reach over and grab the throttle, hold the mode down, sport, and it just says close throttle, and it selects the other mode for you. Ducati wants you to do that because they want the power to come on gently. They don't want you to be on the throttle and then change the mode to a higher power and have the bike suddenly lurch out from under you. So this gives you a little bit more control this way. All right, let's talk about the other highlights of the screen while we're here. Okay, let's talk about the actual TFT screen and what kind of information there is to it. There are different info modes on this bike, and we'll go over that soon. But for time being, we have it in full info mode, so you can kind of see everything that's on there. Top left is going to be a set of information. It's telling us about the settings menu and the lap timer. And so we can turn that on and off whenever we want. And then the settings menu is what we're gonna get into pretty deeply here, but for timing, let's look at the rest of this. Right below that, you're gonna see a little red indicator that's letting us know that the kickstand is down currently and what kind of miles per hour we're at. Below that, there is another info area, and in order to get to that, we're gonna hit the down button on the left switch for about 2 seconds. It highlights it for us, and now we can look at things like trip 1, how many miles per hour consumption trip 1 is getting, what kind of speed, how long you've been on trip 1, and then trip 2, and then current consumption, and how many total miles are on the bike, and back to trip 1. You can sort of set up how this is if you want to change it, but it's set up pretty well through the factory. So if you want to change things like trip 1, you sit enter once. It'll ask you if you want to reset the data. We'll tell it yes. And now you'll see things like the consumption, the speed, and the trip based on one or all down to 0. This is a great way of keeping up with the motorcycle on longer rides, just to see what kind of range you're getting, how long you've been riding it, if you want to take a break, and things like that. To the right of the screen, you've got a nice big tachometer. In the middle of that is your gear indicator, and it'll go through the different gears up to 6. And then to the top of that, you've got your time. Just to the right corner, you're gonna see another little window that is controlled with the right button on the left handlebar that lets us go through things like quick selection for traction control, wheelie control, slide control, engine brake control, and back to traction control again. So if you want to change these quickly while you're riding the motorcycle, you simply scroll through them, hit the enter button, select up or down, and hit enter again, and you're good to go. And then just below that, you've got the engine temperature. And then as I told you earlier, there is a little green light that tells us if the daytime running lamp is on, and then what the ambient air temperature is. And that is your basic full screen description. As I mentioned earlier, there are different info modes for the screen, but ultimately the basics, what I showed you on this screen, are translatable to the other ones as well. So it's the same functionality, it just looks slightly different. And if you have any questions on that, let us know and we'll walk you through it. All right, let's go into the settings mode. So if you want to be going through the settings mode, we're going to use the mode and enter button. We're going to select up for a second to make sure we're in that window, and we're going to hit enter, and boom, we're in the settings mode. And the settings mode has got a lot of different things that we're going to work with. Primarily what most people are interested in is the riding modes, but we're going to go into that in a minute. Let's go down and see what else there is. There's info display, and this is where you can select the bottom left corner of your screen and see how you want to have that sort of set up. Currently it's showing you the total miles, trip 1 miles, consumption 1, speed 1, trip 1, and then you can kind of go along and change those if you want to, but I don't really see any reason in changing that. The factory setup is pretty good, and the good news is that it's cycling up or down, so it doesn't really matter which way you go. It kind of makes it a moot point. But if you want to get out of this, we just hit back, keep scrolling down. Daytime running lamps. Again, it's set on auto. If you go into there, you can take it back to manual. I love it on auto. It works pretty well, and it's really great for me not to have to think about whether the lights are on or off. It just sets it up for me. Display setup. This is where you change the themes. The themes are dark or light. The bike does have a light sensor which works with the headlights and also the dash display. If it's during daytime, it turns the dash light for you. If it's nighttime, it turns the dash dark for you. But if you happen to like one over the other one better, this is where you select it. And then the brightness, you can select how bright or dark the dash is going to be for you. Go back. Pin code. This is a great spot to come in here and put your 4-digital numeric code for the motorcycle. In case you lose the key that the bike comes with, it's always a good idea to make a key that works with the bike, but if it doesn't have the chip on there and you can't get it from your authorized dealership with the chip on it, it'll allow you to at least put the pin that you've put on the bike and be able to fire the bike up. This is a great security device to make sure somebody that has maybe taken a key and copied it doesn't just simply walk away with the motorcycle. Below that is your date and time, and you can set the date and the date format, whether you like it day, month, year, or month, day, year is up to you. And then set the time, and again, the format, whether it's 12 hours or 24 hours. Lap timer is simply on or off, and if there's any sort of data, a lot of people that buy these motorcycles love to go to the track with it, so it's always a good idea to leave the lap timer on. Tire calibration. This is an important one if you decide you want to change the factory tires to a different size, or especially to a track day tire. You simply hit the button, the bike has to be on and running, and then it'll walk you through the process of riding the bike for a short period of time so that the traction control, ABS, and general IMU on the bike can get to know exactly what tires you have on there, so everything works really well together. Turn indicators, again, you can manually turn them on or off, or you can leave it on auto. I love auto, it works really well for me. I tend to be lazy, so I'll leave it there, but you can turn it off if you want to. And then language, we're in the US, so most people will go for English, but pick the one that works best for you so you can understand the bike. And then the units will let you go from miles per hour to kilometers, and gallon versus liters, and Celsius versus Fahrenheit. And then info mode is just telling us how much battery and what kind of power RPMs we're at right now. And then exit out of the settings mode. All right, so we're gonna go back into the settings mode, and we're gonna talk about the riding mode next. Okay, this is the part where everyone has questions about how to set the bike up. So in riding mode, you can change how each one of the modes are from the factory. The factory does a pretty good job of setting it up for you, but Ducati also knows that you paid for this bike and you are a unique person and you have unique riding styles, and maybe you live in an area that has a lot of tracks and you want to go to them. So it's kind of neat to be able to go through this and change the sport, the race, the road, and the wet modes. So I'm going to show you on, let's say, sport mode. You know what? Let's go to road mode. And remember, each one of the modes have the same basic functionality. So I'm just going to show you one and then let you discover the other ones on your own following these steps. And as always, make sure you look at your owner's manual. There's way more information on there. And what we're doing here is a general overview. So we're in road mode on the bike. First things first, DAVC. What does that stand for? It's Ducati Active Vehicle Controls. This is a spot where you can change the traction control, wheelie control, and slide control. So as you go in here for road mode, you'll see that the bike is currently set up more for road. It's set up a little bit for performance, but as you come down, it goes to track mode and goes really into performance mode. You can turn it off if you're brave and super duper well-trained on how to ride a motorcycle. But most people on road mode like to have it somewhere in the middle. The max is 8, so we'll put it back on 4 or 3. So maybe I'll put it on 3, it'll be a little more exciting on this thing. Go back. Next is wheelie control. Again, you can have a max of 8 or all the way down to off. That's right, you can turn wheelie control off on this thing, but we're on road mode, so we'll put it in the middle somewhere at 4 and back. And then slide control. So there's just 1 or 2. I would say I would put it on 2. It's a little bit more on the stability side of things, and you can turn it off all the way if you want to, but we're on road mode, so back on 2. And then the beauty of these modes when you change them is that you can simply change them back to the default factory mode by seeing the little default, hitting enter, and now it's back to default. So everything we did has gone back to where it was. See, it's back on 5 instead of the 4. So there are no wrong answers on this one. All right, let's exit this. Now, on road mode, the next bit is power. The bike has low, medium, and high and full powers. Ducati has set this up really well so that you can modulate what kind of power you want. Most people on wet mode tend to put it on low power. The bike at that point has something around 150 horsepower. Medium power is the full power in the top end, but the initial throttle response is much softer. High power, again, it's full power, but a little bit more modular. And then full is just bananas, all the power all the time, which is great for race mode. We're on road mode now, so we'll just put it on medium. Next is ABS. And again, you can come in here and kind of change it up. So 3 is maximum, and you can go on 1. If you go on 1, it's only ABS on the front wheels, not for the rear at all, which most people tend to set up on race mode or sport mode. So we'll put this, since it's on road mode, back on 3, most amount of ABS. Engine brake. 3 is going to be sort of the max amount of engine brake, and 1 is the minimum. It's going to vary for you and what kind of riding style you have. 2 is a nice neutral spot to be in. And then quick shift. It's either on or off. It used to be back in the day you could just turn on off up or off down, but now they can just put it on off if you'd rather use the clutch for everything, or on. Word of advice. From experience, these bikes really love it when you use quick shift when you're giving it sort of more than 50% power. So if you're giving the bike the full beans, upshifts are nice and smooth. If you're just kind of puttering around town in first and second gear, I would highly suggest using the clutch. Much smoother and much safer, I think. Info mode. Okay, this is something we kind of covered in the very beginning. So there is going to be track Evo, road, and track. Road mode is going to be all the information, and then track and track Evo is going to be more track oriented. I'm going to show you that one in a different mode here in a second, just so you can kind of see. So let's put the bike in a different mode. We're going to go in race mode, and as you can see, the entire dash changes. This is the track mode. Really not as much importance on the miles per hour or kilometers per hour on the motorcycle. What you're looking for is a lap timer and the tachometer and what gear you're in, and then the quick access menu for things like traction control and wheelie control. So I've set this up on race mode so you can see what it looks like. We're going to go back to road mode and go back into the settings menu, back into riding mode, and pick up where we left off here. And then the info display, again, you can kind of change what, how it sets that whole thing for you. And that's really it. It's pretty simple on this thing. So if you've done anything that you don't like, just set it back on default. Not a big deal, pretty easy, but have some fun with it. Another word of advice, if you buy the S model of this motorcycle or the R model of the Panigale, they do come with lithium-ion batteries. So I would highly suggest getting a lithium-ion battery compatible charger, plug it in if you're going to be playing with this for a prolonged period of time so you don't drain your battery. Really, really good idea. Okay, after info mode, you've got DES, which stands for Ducati Electronic Suspension. What's kind of neat about this is that it's got 2 different modes. There's dynamic and fixed. Now, as I said, this is kind of a brief overview, so I'm not going to go over the details of how to set up your suspension, and that is not my specialty, and there's people far better versed than I am on this one. But essentially, dynamic is going to allow you to leave the bike alone and just kind of ride it the way you want to ride it, and the suspension acts accordingly. And fixed is better for track riders. For instance, on my Streetfighter V4S, we've set up the fixed suspension for my weight and my riding style, and it was done by a professional. And so anytime I go to a track, I put it in fixed mode, and if I'm on the streets, I put it in dynamic mode, and it's just that easy. It's kind of a beautiful thing. So once it's set up for you, Make sure your local dealer has any option for setting up basic suspension sags and limits for you. If they don't, there's probably someone that they know that is a professional at suspension. I'd love to name Dave Moss's name into this video, as that's who set up my suspension for me, and he's very, very competent. But the beautiful thing is you can go to any good, decent track day provider, and chances are they have someone or know someone that can set that up for you. But this is a good spot to do it and allow you to modify it altogether for yourself. Other than that, again, there's a default button if you want to set up this entire, so we're in the road mode right now, as you can see in the top left. If I was to hit this, everything's back to default again. It's as if I never touched this motorcycle, and we move on. So same basic functions on wet and sport and race. Set the bike up accordingly for yourself. Again, I'll repeat myself, check the owner's manual if you have any specific details that you want to go over, or give us a call or your favorite dealership a call, and we'll walk you through it for you. And then other than that, we've already gone through all the rest of this stuff. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any other questions, let me know. And this concludes our walk around of your new favorite motorcycle. Remember, always check your owner's manual if you have any questions, and give us a call here at Moto Corsa 503-292-7488, and we'll be happy to walk you through it again.